Alright, welcome back to Adobe Photoshop CC. In this tutorial we're going to continue and finalize this composite here that we've been working on. I have this image from the NASA Hubble telescope. You can Google NASA telescope images or simply go to nasa.gov and find some really cool images. NASA's absolutely fabulous about releasing these for free. Make sure it is an actual photo and not some illustration. NASA does have lots of illustrations on their website. So this is an actual photo here. And I'm just going to drag this to the composite by just dragging with the move tool here. So I'm going to drag up to the composite and then drag down and then release. Now you'll notice it's a little bit smaller than the photo that I have selected for the composite. What I'm going to do is I want this to essentially be in the sky here. So what I'm going to do is create a mask for this. So I am going to free transform it first by hitting Control T or Command T on the Mac and then holding the Shift key just so it's bigger than the image a little bit, just so it fills that whole area there, and that should work pretty well. And then just hit Enter or Return on a Mac. Now I'm going to turn it off temporarily, the eyeball here, and I'm going to scroll down to the background layer because that's what needs to be selected for the masking. So while this is selected, I'm going to go to the Channels palette. Channels basically is a great way to utilize masking, especially for landscapes. So we have the red, the green, and the blue channel. And the idea here is you find the highest contrast between the ground and the sky. Typically that is going to be the blue channel because if you think about it, the blue channel has the blue coolness of the sky and the warmth of the ground as the contrast. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag this to this folder icon next to the trash can. So I'm going to hold the mouse down on this blue channel, drag down to the folder icon, and then release. And essentially I get what should say blue copy here. Now I can destroy this copy, I can do whatever I want to it, and I'll still have the original channels here because this is a copy. We're essentially going to make a mask out of this. So while this is selected, I'm going to go to the image icon up here at the top and go down to adjustments and choose levels. Now this is a permanent adjustment. This isn't a parametric adjustment, so do realize that. And you need to use this when you're in the channels. You can't use the regular adjustments. So what I'm going to do is grab the dark icon needle on the left here and drag inwards till I start to get pretty good black in here. And then I'm going to drag the far right top needle to the left, which will basically brighten the sky here. And what you want to do is essentially bring those two little sliders close to each other. And sometimes you have to, bring back the white, to adjust, but you want this kind of effect pretty close. Now, I'm getting pretty close here. I think something like that'll work, and click OK. Now you'll see that there's still a lot of junk in here. What I want to make sure I do is sort of clean up right in here. So I'm going to switch my paintbrush by hitting the B key, right click, and choose the hard round brush. I'm going to set my blend mode to normal if you've been working with anything else. You want to make sure that's normal, and 100% opacity. Now I'm going to hit the D key, which will give me the default black and white, and make sure by hitting the X key that black is my foreground color. So now what I'm going to do is click here and hold the Shift key and click right here and basically paint out all this junk along here. So I can get close and hit the Shift key again. Now I'm going to hit the X key, which will essentially flip those, and I can paint out some of this white by clicking here and clicking here with the Shift key. Now I don't have to worry about this edge line. It's a little junky along the edge. That's okay. Now to load this as a mask, I'm going to hold the Control key on the PC or the Command key on the Mac and click on that little icon there, and you should see a marching ants around the white. I want to select the RGB again, so that brings us back into our composite. And then I want to scroll all the way up to that actual photo of the space and turn it on. So I got to make sure it's visible. Once I do that, then I can simply click on the mask icon, which looks like a camera. It's a square with a circle. Once I do that, boom, you'll see that this fits nicely in here. Now if I want to reposition it, I can't simply drag downwards. I'm going to undo by hitting Control Z or Command Z. You want to uncheck this little lock between the mask and the photo. That way, if you're moving along here, you can adjust it. Now you want to make sure you don't have the mask selected, but the actual photo. And as I move, I can drag inside and it's still masked. So I'm just going to reposition a little bit. But I pretty much like the way it was there. The next thing I want to do is change the blend mode, because right now it doesn't blend. I mean, it looks pretty strange. So let's switch from normal to overlay. Now we get this kind of cool effect here. Now what I want to do next is perhaps drop the opacity of this layer. Maybe it's a little bit too bright. I'm thinking it's a little bit bright there. And then I want to click on the mask and actually double click in the mask to open up the properties for the mask and actually feather the edge. What that will do is soften that edge along here and basically get rid of any artifacts along the edge there. That looks pretty good. I kind of like this effect here. Again, it just adds a little bit of mystery, a little bit of sci-fi quality with this outer space image, stars in the sky, which is kind of strange but kind of cool. If you want to mask out certain areas, you could. You could click in the mask here if I want to paint out some of these. Just basically reduce the size of my brush, make sure I have black as my foreground color, and paint away, and I could get rid of those little spots. However, what will happen is you'll get the more of the sky to show through. So you would probably better off using the healing brush and actually going into the photo and actually getting rid of some of the stars. So I'm going to right click and duplicate this layer, click OK, and turn off the bottom one just so I have an original here. But as I paint out, maybe a couple of these little stars are just a little bit too bright. I mean, I kind of dig some of them, but some of them might be a little bit too much. So basically you can use that spot healing brush to knock back some of these. So the final step for this is to basically deal with lighting. So what we're going to do is add a new layer here, which is next to the trash can, and we're going to fill this image with gray. We're going to go to the Edit Fill command, and in here, I believe by default this is set to foreground color, it might be black background color. Click in the drop down menu and choose 50% gray, and then click OK. This is what it should look like. Now before we add the lens flare effect, we want to change the blend mode from normal to overlay, because what overlay does is it gets rid of anything that is 50% gray. But if it's bright, for example a lens flare, it'll show up on that layer, essentially creating an invisible mask, which is pretty cool. So under the filter category here, if you go down to render, you can choose the lens flare. Lens flare is kind of a cool effect. Basically you click and drag wherever you want. I kind of want mine to be in the left corner, I think. And you can adjust the brightness here. You can make it really bright or more dim. There's a couple of lens types you can kind of experiment with. Actually the 105 is kind of interesting, but I think I'm going to choose the top one just because it does have kind of a sci-fi quality and have that lens effect there. Now I'm going to hit Control Z and or Command Z on a Mac and apply that one more time. Because I want to go in a slightly different place. I think I want it to be up higher, and I do want it to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to increase the brightness of it and click OK and see how that looks. That looks pretty cool. It's kind of in the corner. I may adjust that further, but what you can do is you can switch to your move tool and actually physically move it, but you'll notice you get some edge lines there. So instead of that, I'm going to undo, go to Filter, Render, and choose that lens flare effect again and just move it out of that corner a little bit. It's just a little bit extreme there, and click OK, and I kind of like that effect there. Now the last effect I want to apply is some final painting effects on here. So what I'm going to do is, with this top layer selected, hold the hotkey, it's a very unusual hotkey, of Control Shift Alt and E all together, or Command Shift Alt Option E, Command Shift Option E for a Mac. And what that does, it gives me this cool duplicate copy of everything, a merged duplicate copy. So I can hold Alt or Option on the eyeball, and you'll see as I turn off all my other layers, this is a flattened layer. And what I typically do is I right click and duplicate this layer, click OK, so I have two layers here to choose from basically. I'm going to hold Alt or Option on this top layer here. I'm going to switch to the paintbrush, and the one blend mode I really enjoy playing around with is the color dodge and the color burn. The color dodge will lighten and the color burn will darken the image. So let's switch to color dodge first, and what we're going to do is right click, choose the soft fuzzy brush. We want to increase the size using the bracket keys and drop the opacity really low, maybe 20%. So I type the 2 key, and I'm going to hold Alt or Option and choose some sky in here. And as I paint, what will happen is we'll get this sort of extra bloom effect on here. Now I'm going to undo a couple times. Maybe I'm going to hit 1, so I only have 10% of this because this is awfully bright. In fact, I may choose a darker shade of color here as I click. And what will happen is it'll get brighter, but not quite as progressive as I paint in here. It just adds a little bit extra brightness. It's more artificial that way, but it's kind of cool too, to kind of bring the whole image together. So what I'm going to switch to now is the color burn tool and do the same thing. I'm going to select something dark in the image. It could be the cool color, it could be something brown along here, and have the opacity kind of low, like 10% is good. And then as I click in here, what will happen is it'll darken the image. So I could kind of darken around the outside here if I want. I'm going to undo a couple of times, and I'm going to pick something not quite so dark, somewhere a little bit in the gray, and double click in that color and move it up a little bit so it's not quite so dark. And then as I click, you can see it kind of burns in that darkness and just adds a little bit of contrast. I can even add a little bit more contrast in that sky, and basically just kind of paint around wherever I want to maximize that effect. Now I can turn on the layer below, and then on the top layer drop the opacity and get kind of a blend between the two. Obviously if I go to 0%, it's back to the way it was. So kind of want to blend the two together. If we turn it off and on, it just adds a little bit extra effect there, which is kind of cool and basically composites everything together. There's some final things you could apply, like a grain texture might be kind of cool, or some text, and maybe I'll do that in a future tutorial. But at this point, I can call this a pretty well completed composite. So thanks for being with us in Photoshop CC. See you soon. Until next time. Cheers.